So now the 11th candidate in Chicago's race for mayor. You actually ran for mayor in 2015 and dropped out and then ended up endorsing Bob Fioretti, who was alderman at that time. Tell me, why are you deciding to run again?
Well, so the city of Chicago is facing some pretty significant challenges across the board. I think people are very aware of that. But what that also means is that there are some very unique opportunities for us to really move the city in a drastically different direction. And so for me, this is a continuation of the same things that I talked about the first time. What is the vision for Chicago, and what kind of leadership does it take for us to get there?
Okay. As we know, it's a big job. There's so many problems. We're going to just try to dive in here with just a few of them with the short time that we have. You mentioned building a local economy and using a public bank to do that. How do you think that will help facilitate economic growth in the city that desperately needs it, specifically on the south and west sides?
Yeah, so we really need some severe structural changes to our city's finances. And the public bank is one of the things that could be transformative for our economy. It is a bank whose sole responsibility is making sure that we have a strong economy. What that means is the ability to issue low-interest business loans for small business owners, home loans for homeowners. And one of the biggest things that it does is we spend billions of dollars on infrastructure projects, and 40 to 50% of that we pay to private banks just in interest rates on those projects. A public bank would actually allow us to finance our own infrastructure projects as a city, which means we're saving hundreds of millions of dollars and we're generating revenue, which is sorely needed. So if we're going to really address the city's economy and address some of the structural issues, especially when we talk about revenue, it means we have to implement some pretty drastic, transformative economic policies that create economic growth for the city.
Okay, there's so much to get to. Let's talk about your position on charter schools and funding within our public school system.
Yes, so what we've seen over the years as charters have proliferated in the city of Chicago is it's created competition between charter schools and local neighborhood schools. Because CPS has a student-based budgeting model, which means the funding follows the student, schools that have a higher population have more funding. What we saw is that as more charter schools were created, those schools were actually siphoning students and thereby funding from those public neighborhood schools. As the city's population has declined drastically, even in CPS, we're seeing that now we're looking at schools that are severely have low populations, in some instances 10 or 35 students in a class, and so they are in danger of closing.
So how do we fix that? So are you saying that we should not have charter schools, or there should be a limit in terms of how many students or what funding goes to charter schools? What should be done?
Yeah, so two things. One is that charters have to adhere to the same accountability standards and metrics that public neighborhood schools have to adhere to within CPS. That is absolutely essential. Two is that we cannot continue to expand or build or create new charter schools if we have local neighborhood schools that are already there, because what that does, again, is it siphons off resources that would otherwise go to our neighborhood public schools. So we can't continue to expand charter schools in the city.
Okay, it's always so many issues to get to and not enough time, but I do have to ask you about the crime and violence that's happening in the city. Mayor Emanuel and Chicago's police superintendent Eddie Johnson, they've been trying to put more officers, just within recent weeks, put more officers on the streets of Chicago. Do you think that will help fix the crime issues that we have in our city?
Well, what we have to realize is that violence is not a policing issue. Violence is an issue of the public policy failings across the board. It requires investment in the things that build people up: behavioral and mental health services, education, economic investment in communities. And so what we see is every time we see these waves of violence or crime, we talk about putting more police on the streets. That doesn't get to the root of the problem. We as a city have to be invested in actually getting to the roots of violence, which is investing across the board in many public policy areas that we have not really paid attention to.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there just one plea you would like to make to our city's leaders right now, or to people out there that you're hoping will vote for you?
Well, definitely that this is an opportunity that we have to really move the city in the right direction. The status quo has not worked for the city for far too many communities, and we're invested in really creating the kind of change that we want to see. And so this campaign also represents people. It is about people power in the city of Chicago and our ability to actualize the vision that we have for our communities.
Okay, well, it is a pleasure to meet you, and good luck in the race,
in
your race for mayor.
Thank you.
Make sure you vote. Of course, that primary election is February 26, 2019. For more information, you can head to amaraenyia.com. Chicago's primary election, again, February 26.